Okay, picture this. It's super late, like 3:07 a.m. Suddenly there's this sound, like a freight train tearing through, and then this awful orange glow everywhere, reflecting off snow, ice.
Yeah, it's that sickly light you never want to see.
Exactly. And then, of course, the sirens start closing in. This wasn't, just a house fire. This was a meth lab in a house rented by college students, and it just went up violently.
hmm The estimates were, 30, maybe 33 victims.
Yeah.
Just a staggering number, a massive tragedy right from the start.
And that's where we kick off our deep dive today with that explosion, the Rosewood meth lab disaster.
Right. But what's really wild is how this one event just exploded outwards, like ripples in a pond. We've got through a ton of sources. And it turns out this tragedy set off this incredibly tangled chain reaction.
You're talking linked murders.
Yeah, assassinations, really. And then there's this whole high-stakes museum theft plot running alongside it.
Plus political infighting.
Oh, big time.
Yeah.
And maybe strangest of all, it drags up this cold case, like decades old, involving a coded message hidden inside a doll.
It sounds like a complete maze. So our mission today, yours and mine, is to try and synthesize all this. We're basically following forensic anthropologist Dr. Diane Fallon through this mess.
She's juggling multiple crime scenes, right? And dealing with all the political games.
Yeah, Chief Garnett clashing with the arson investigator, Marcus McNair, this Councilman Adler lurking around. It's messy.
So we want to connect the dots.
Exactly. Connect the bodies, the bullets, the stolen diamonds, that weird code, and figure out why it all spiraled like this. Let's try and unpack it.
Okay, so ground zero, Rose Avenue, the scene itself was just hellish. Icy ground, slush everywhere, rubble, that blackened foundation.
And the victims. The sources described church groups setting up a comfort station, but the reality was grim.
Totally grim, lots of charred bodies, many in that awful pugilistic pose you see in intense fires. It's where the heat makes the muscles contract so they look like they're curled up, defending themselves.
God, horrible. And right away, you mentioned politics. The problem started immediately.
Almost instantly. This arson investigator, Marcus McNair, he basically barrels onto the scene and tries to take charge, especially controlling who handles the evidence.
And Diane Fallon's team, even Chief Garnett, they saw this how?
The sources are pretty clear. They saw it as pure political maneuvering. Like, right from minute one, he seemed intent on either compromising the investigation or at least controlling the narrative.
Which is just what you don't need in a massive tragedy like this.
Exactly. It shows how quickly self-preservation, or maybe covering something up, can override just doing the job right. And then things get even weirder for Diane personally, almost immediately.
The carjacker.
Yeah, she's driving towards the scene, and this young guy, Bleat Stanton, covered in soot, flags her down. Turns out he just lost his right hand in the explosion.
Wow.
And he tries to carjack her at gunpoint. So naturally, the initial thought is, okay, this kid's involved in the meth lab. He's desperately trying to escape.
That's anomaly number one, then. A fugitive student missing a hand. But you said the scene itself had mysteries, forensic ones.
Right, so the crime lab gets to work on the IDs. It's brutal stuff, dental charts, x-rays, trying to piece people back together. And they find this one incredibly sad, strange piece of evidence.
What was it?
It was a tiny fragment of skull bone, parietal bone, but still attached to it was this perfect, untouched lock of blonde hair. Somehow, it survived the fire completely intact, just pristine.
Wow, that's haunting.
Incredibly poignant. And that lock of hair, it turns out to belong to a young woman named Kimberlyn, who was the niece of one of the main victims.
Yeah.
And that becomes a crucial piece later for the revenge motive.
Okay, so that's one forensic puzzle piece. What was the other?
The other one was just bizarre. Amidst all these recent victims, the students killed in the fire, they find a complete skeleton.
A skeleton? Like old?
Yeah, clearly very old. The description was too flexed, meaning maybe it was bound or in a container, and mighty brown, like aged bone. The initial analysis suggested it could be 100 years old, maybe like a Civil War vet's remains that someone had just kept stored in a box or a trunk in the house.
Wait, so it was just accidentally cremated along with everything else?
Pretty much. Accidental contamination of a modern mass casualty scene with century-old bones.
So just to recap day one, Diane's facing a potential political cover-up, a desperate injured carjacker, a haunting lock of hair, and a random 100-year-old skeleton mixed in with the meth lab victims.
Yeah, it's an absolute tangle of information right from the get-go. Shows you never know what layers you'll find, even in the most immediate disasters.
Okay, so the initial shock of the fire starts to settle, but then the situation takes a much darker, colder turn. We're moving into executions now.
Right. Blake Stanton, the kid who tried to carjack Diane, He gets out of the hospital, he's got a lawyer, seems like he's trying to figure out his next move.
But he doesn't get much time.
No, he's found dead, murdered in his boathouse, shot in the head.
How was he killed? Close range.
Well, that's the thing. The report notes no stippling. Those are the tiny powder burns you get from a very close shot. So it suggests he was shot from a bit of a distance, or maybe with a silencer. It felt planned, not impulsive.
Okay, so Stanton's dead, and then...
And then, very soon after, Marcus McNair, the arson investigator, who was acting shady at the scene, he's also killed. Assassinated while he was out for a jog.
Assassinated feels like the right word here.
Absolutely. This wasn't just a quick hit. He was shot first in the knee to stop him, disable him, then in the chest, and finally point blank in the head.
That's personal. That's rage. That's not just silencing someone.
Exactly. It screams execution, pure and simple. And then the ballistics report comes back, and it just clicks everything into place, or seems to.
Let me guess. Same gun.
Same type of gun. A Beretta. Used in both murders. So the immediate conclusion is, okay, we've got the same killer, or at least the same group, tying up loose ends.
Right. The obvious theory is the drug network is cleaning house, taking out anyone who knows too much, like Stanton maybe, and McNair, who might have been involved or tried to interfere.
That's the logical first assumption. But then, the investigation digs deeper into what McNair was actually doing. Remember how he tried to control the evidence?
Yeah, it seemed like political maneuvering.
Well, they eventually find some of the evidence he apparently tried to get rid of. It was dumped in a warehouse connected to that Councilman Adler you mentioned.
Okay. And what did that compromised evidence show?
It showed something crucial the initial scene assessment missed, or maybe McNair hid. They found 2 left femora, 2 left thigh bones.
Wait, 2? Belonging to different people.
Exactly, which meant there wasn't just one other victim found in the basement meth lab area, there were 2. And this second, previously unknown victim turned out to be McNair's own cousin, Eric.
Wow. So McNair wasn't covering up for some big conspiracy?
No, he was covering up for his own family. His cousin was one of the cooks, died in the basement lab. McNair was desperately trying to destroy evidence linking his family directly to the whole operation.
That completely reframes why he was acting so corruptly. It wasn't politics, it was panic, familial desperation.
Precisely. And that's likely why he was executed so brutally. Not because he knew too much about a drug ring, but because he failed to cover up his family's devastating connection.
So while all this is unfolding, the fire's aftermath, the executions, the family cover-up, Diane Fallon's got this other major headache, right? Because she's also the museum director.
Yeah, talk about professional whiplash. She's dealing with charred bodies and bullets one minute, and the next she's tackling a completely separate crime wave hitting the museum.
What kind of stuff was going missing?
It was quite a list, according to the sources. Rare books, cash from the registers, these really valuable golden cowrie shells, and even diamonds, including the famous Van Ross diamond. Major thefts.
Okay, so who was behind this?
Turns out it was Blake Stanton, the student who got murdered in the boathouse.
The carjacker. He was the museum thief.
Yep. He was working with his girlfriend, Darcy Kincaid. And get this, she was an exhibit planner at the museum. She was actually injured in the meth lab explosion, too.
Seriously? So Stanton wasn't involved in the meth lab at all?
Apparently not. His crime was theft, not drugs. They actually found some of the stolen cowrie shells later, recovered from Diane's car after it was processed following the carjacking attempt. It confirmed his link to the museum job.
Okay, that's one thread tied up. But you mentioned this theft plot somehow leads to the older mystery, the cold case.
Right, indirectly. Because the investigation into the museum thefts brings Diane into contact with another employee there, a woman named Juliet Price.
And she's important how?
Juliet is dealing with some really severe psychological trauma. She has these fragmented memories, nightmares really, related to something terrifying that happened when she was a child, a kidnapping about 20 years ago down in Florida.
Wow. What does she remember?
It's fragments. She has this intense fear of new dolls in boxes. That phrase keeps coming up. And she's also terrified of a specific word, palimpsest.
Palimpsest, like scraped parchment reused? That's oddly specific.
Very. And it's this connection to Juliet, this haunted employee falsely accused in the thefts, that accidentally unlocks the real driver behind some of the violence. It shifts focus completely.
How so?
Because someone starts actively hunting Juliet. It culminates in a gunman showing up, and his description matches the guy who killed Joanna Cipriano, another murder we need to touch on.
Okay.
This gunman tries to steal a specific antique doll from Diane, thinking Juliet might have passed it to her or hidden it.
A doll, relating to the new dolls in boxes fear.
Exactly. But Diane was a step ahead. She'd already taken the original doll apart and had a decoy ready. And inside, the real doll.
Let me guess. The code.
Bingo. Hidden inside, written on brittle, aged paper. A coded message.
And this code wasn't related to the meth lab or the museum thefts.
Not at all. The investigation quickly linked it to a really old local legend, the Leo Parish treasure. Supposedly a huge stash of gold lost during the massive 1935 Labor Day hurricane.
So, suddenly, underneath the drug tragedy and the thefts, there's this other motive operating. A decades-old treasure hunt driving people to violence.
Precisely. A completely separate, much older crime ring that just happened to surface because of all the chaos from the explosion.
Yeah.
And that treasure hunt motive. It immediately explains another murder that, until then, seemed completely random. The killing of Joanna Cipriano.
Okay, tell me about her case. What happened?
She was found murdered in her apartment. Place was tossed, looked like someone was searching frantically. Blunt force trauma was the cause of death. But the key detail came from a witness.
What did they hear?
They overheard part of the confrontation. The killer apparently asked Cipriano about a book. And Cipriano reportedly said, just before she was killed, "Do I know you?"
Do I know you?
Wait.
Didn't you say?
Exactly. That specific phrase, "Do I know you?" was one of Juliet Price's fragmented traumatic memories from right before her childhood kidnapping 20 years earlier.
No way. So the killer thought Cipriano was Juliet.
It seems almost certain. It was a catastrophic case of mistaken identity. Cipriano lived near Juliet. Her address was incredibly similar, like hundreds of 31H instead of 13H or something like that. And she even fit the general description. Blonde hair, blue eyes.
So the treasure hunter, desperate to find Juliet and the code, or maybe a related book, killed the wrong woman entirely.
Just tragic. A completely innocent victim caught in the crossfire of this decades-old treasure hunt, simply because she resembled the real target and lived nearby.
Okay, so that accounts for the treasure hunter's violence. But what about the executions? Stanton and McNair, who was behind those? We know it was the same Beretta.
Right. That trail leads somewhere else entirely. The forensic work, specifically piecing together small clues like cigarette butts left at the scenes, pointed investigators in a surprising direction.
Where?
Towards Archie Donahue, who was, believe it or not, the police evidence clerk, a familiar face around the station. And he wasn't working alone. His sister Catherine was involved too. And Catherine lived, almost unbelievably, right next door to Marcus McNair.
The evidence clerk. And his sister. Why would they execute McNair and Stanton?
It wasn't about drugs or treasure or politics for them. It was about grief. Pure, raw grief and revenge.
How so? What was their connection?
Remember that lock of pristine blonde hair Diane found in the explosion rubble?
Yeah, Kimberly's hair. You said it was important.
It belonged to Archie and Catherine's niece, Kimberlyn. She was young, she was pregnant, and she died in that meth lab explosion. Archie, working in the evidence room, saw that piece of his niece, that lock of hair, come in. And according to the sources, it just broke him.
He felt the system failed.
Completely. He saw McNair corrupting the investigation from the inside, potentially protecting those responsible. He felt the whole system had failed to stop the drug operation that kills Kimberlyn and her unborn child. So he and his sister decided to deliver their own justice.
They became vigilantes.
Exactly. Targeting those they believed responsible for Kimberlyn's death.
Which leads us back to that final awful irony, doesn't it?
It really does. Because in their grief-fueled quest for vengeance, the Donahues actually got one target right and one tragically wrong.
They killed McNair,
who was corruptly covering up his family's involvement, shielding his cousin Eric. So in a way, they executed the right villain there.
But they also killed Blake Stanton.
Right. And Stanton, as we now know, had nothing to do with the meth lab. He was just a thief. But because he fled the scene injured, tried to carjack Diane, Archie and Catherine mistakenly assumed he was part of the drug crew they were hunting. They killed an innocent person, relatively speaking, based on a wrong assumption fueled by their pain.
So the vigilante plot is uncovered. Archie and Catherine's motive is clear. That whole thread is resolved, tragically. Now the focus has to swing back entirely to that code, right? The treasure hunt.
Absolutely. That's the lingering mystery. Diane's team, particularly her husband Frank and another colleague Jen, they focus on cracking that cipher found in the doll.
What kind of code was it?
It turned out to be a Vigenère cipher, which is it's a pretty classic polyalphabetic substitution type. Basically, you need a keyword to decode it.
And finding that keyword was the challenge.
Right, until they had that aha moment, connecting it back to Juliet Price and her specific trauma.
The word she was afraid of, palimpsest.
Exactly. They figured the key had to be related to that. They found the full phrase Juliet seemed to be fixated on. The making of palimpsest was possible even with papyri, in an old 1935 edition of a wonder book.
Okay. And that phrase gave him the key.
It did. Through some analysis, they extracted the keyword Roman.
And once they had Roman, they could read the coded message.
Yep. And decrypting that message blew the lid right off that 20-year-old cold case from Indiana.
The one Juliet witnessed.
The very same.
Yeah.
The code directly linked the treasure hunt to a man named Quinn Sebastian, who was a descendant of the original Leo Parrish. Quinn had been murdered 2 decades earlier. The decrypted message confirmed that the doll, the code, the treasure that was the motive behind the massacre of Quinn's family back then.
Which explains Juliet's fragmented memory of new dolls in boxes.
Chillingly, yes. The sources suggest that was her traumatized child's mind recalling the bodies, possibly wrapped in plastic.
God. So the people who killed Quinn's family were still active, still after the treasure.
Yes. They were identified as Burke Rawson and Aurelia Lee, and they realized Diane now had the code or knew about it, so they came after her.
This leads to the final confrontation.
It does, a really violent one. They attacked Diane trying to get the code back, but Diane, again, was prepared. She'd anticipated this and swapped the real coded message with the forgery.
Smart, but still terrifying for her.
Absolutely terrifying. The sources describe her basically barricaded in a child's closet, fighting for her life with whatever she could grab, a baseball bat, pieces of shattered glass.
Did she make it?
She did. She managed to defend herself. Burke Rawson was killed in the confrontation. Diane shot him. Aurelia Lee was severely injured and ended up in a coma.
So that immediate threat was neutralized, but it sounds like not everything got wrapped up neatly.
Not even close. The ending is really a mix of solved cases and dangling threads. The vigilante plot is over. The active treasure hunters are stopped, for now. But the full extent of that meth operation, still pretty murky. Who was really at the top?
And what about Councilman Adler, the guy whose warehouse McNair used? You said the vigilantes tied him up?
Yeah, Archie and Catherine apparently bound him and left him in the basement of the original meth house before the explosion. He somehow survived the blast and escaped, but his exact role or fate afterwards, the sources leave that ambiguous. He just sort of vanishes from the narrative.
Wow, when you lay it all out like that, it's just an incredible density of tragedy and crime, all interconnected in these bizarre ways.
It really is. You start with one catastrophic event, the explosion,
Yeah.
and it acts like this catalyst. It fuels political corruption, which then partly fuels this grief-driven vigilante spree.
Which runs parallel to exposing this totally separate, almost unbelievable crime ring chasing a treasure from the 1930s.
Exactly. It's a masterclass in how different motives, greed, grief, power, obsession, can collide and spiral in totally unexpected directions.
So what's the big takeaway for us looking back at all these sources? What's the lesson here?
I think for me, it really highlights the fragility of justice, how easily the truth can get buried or twisted when you have compromised information.
Compromised either by deliberate acts, like McNair's cover-up.
Right, the political corruption angle.
Yeah.
Or compromised by something deeply personal and internal, like Juliet's fragmented trauma shaping her reality, or Archie Donaghy's overwhelming grief driving him to violence. Those personal factors just fundamentally altered the course of everything.
It makes you think about what else might have been missed, doesn't it? While Diane's team was chasing vigilantes and treasure hunters, what other threads got dropped?
Well, there's that one final nagging detail the sources leave us with. Remember the 2 left femora they found in Adler's warehouse?
Yeah, that confirmed McNair's cousin Eric was the second victim in the basement.
Right. So Eric's remains were accounted for, but that still leaves the other set of bones found back at the original explosion site, those ancient ones, the 100-year-old skeleton.
The potential Civil War vet accidentally caught in the fire.
Yeah. The sources mentioned it had a bullet hole, possibly very old. It was never positively identified. So you're left wondering, what secrets did that skeleton carry into the fire? Was its presence purely accidental contamination? And with McNair and Stanton dealt with, and Eric identified, where did the actual kingpin of that whole drug operation disappear to? Who was really running the show?
So the immediate case is closed, but the deeper origins
Sure.
still out there. That's definitely something to chew on.